rather than you hear from me, but let me just mention two news items that are the last day or so. First is, of course, as you know, the President announced his nominee for the United States Supreme Court position to replace Justice Souter. Judge Sotomayor is his nominee. Elections have consequences. Elections have consequences, and one of the consequences is that the President nominates his person to fill judicial positions, and that would not have been my nominee. I have to be very honest with you. That wouldn't have been my nominee, but elections have consequences. But the United States Senate also has a role of advice and consent, and the United States Supreme Court, the United States Senate will sooner or later, depending on what happens, will vote on that nomination. Now, I'd like to see Justice Sotomayor has a long record of time on the bench. I will be reviewing her decisions, her overall judicial philosophy. I happen to be of the view that we should select judges who believe in interpretation of the Constitution of the United States that's strict. Now that's my view. That's my philosophy. Now there are some on the other side who believe that we should have activist judges who use their positions on the bench to right social wrongs or to do use the courts as a way for activist behavior. I just don't happen to share that view. I think that's the job of the legislative and the executive branch, and I think that's the way our founding fathers envisioned it. So, we'll be reviewing this nominee's record and then coming to a decision. As you probably know, John Kyle, my colleague in the Senate, and does a wonderful job, is one of the senior members of the Judiciary Committee, and John will also be very heavily involved in this process. The other issue that happened yesterday, as you know, was the testing of a nuclear device by the North Koreans. Now, it's very disturbing. It's very disturbing not only because of what the North Koreans are doing in North Korea, but they have been involved in exporting some of this nuclear technology. You may recall a year or so ago the Israelis bombed a facility in Syria that was a nuclear facility that the North Koreans were helping the Syrians with. There's no doubt that the North Koreans will do anything for money, and they will, and there are allegations that they have been involved in exporting to other nations some of this technology, which is one of the great threats to the future of the world, which is nuclear proliferation. That countries that are basically terrorist nations, or certainly nations that are avowed enemies of ours and the state of Israel, acquire nuclear weapons. And one of these nations, like the Iranians, acquires nuclear weapons, and the other nations in the regions are going to want to have nuclear weapons as well. This is very serious. And I could go into it for a long time because there's a long history and all that. But what needs to be done now is we need to have meaningful sanctions. We need to go back and impose whatever financial restrictions on financial dealings that they have. But most importantly, the Chinese are really the only, it's a little straight talk, the only country that really has a lot of influence on North Korea. Okay? It's time the Chinese stepped up to the plate. They're becoming a world power, and they should exercise influence to bring this kind of activity on the part of the North Koreans to a halt. We do not have that kind of influence over North Korea. So, look, this is serious business. And there are allegations during the campaign that the President of the United States would be tested. And I don't know if it's intentional testing, but there's no doubt that when you look at the Iranians, when you look at North Korea, when you look at our own hemisphere, that the President of the United States is being tested. I intend to support him in every way possible, and I know that you do as well. Finally, could I just say, since yesterday was Memorial Day, and some of you keep up with my family activities, my son Jack graduated Friday from the Naval Academy and is going to pilot training in Pensacola. And I hope that he's a better pilot than I was. And our other son Jimmy, as you know, is overseas. He's been to Iraq. He's a Lance Corporal, and he's doing fine. And our daughter Megan does a blog, and sometimes we have very spirited conversations at the dinner table, and which is good, which is healthy in every field. And our daughter Bridget is entering her last year in high school, and I again appreciate all the work and humanitarian efforts that Cindy continues to make. Yesterday, as we all know, was a day that a lot of people thought was the beginning of summer, a chance to go over to the beaches in San Diego, or a trip to the mountains, or whatever. But yesterday was especially meaningful all over our state, because we have so many brave young Americans, both in the Guard and Reserve in Arizona, and also those serving on active duty defending freedom. My friends, the conflict in Afghanistan is going to be tough. It's going to be very tough, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. Because the parts of Afghanistan that the Taliban still control, we're going to have to go in there. The same way that we did when we did the surge in Iraq. With an increase in casualties, but with thanks to General Petraeus and these brave young Americans, we did succeed. We can succeed in Afghanistan, but there are tough times ahead. So Memorial Day yesterday was especially meaningful and important for us to recognize the service and sacrifice of the men and women who have served this country. Thank you. God bless. I'm ready to answer any questions.